natural disasters and the impacts of natural disasters, we are very reactionary, which is, I don't think it's any of our fault because, as I said, a lot of these things require necessary financing, and if the necessary financing is missing, you can't exactly be as proactive as you want. But we are reactionary as it relates to climate change and other exogenous shocks that affect the Caribbean. And so it always has the Caribbean in kind of a recovery mode. As I said, the Bahamas is now in a recovery mode. I think they got to go ahead to move because Nicole moved away from the Bahamas and made her way to Florida. So now the Bahamas is going to be in recovery mode. We have a caller. Good morning, caller. You're live on Inside the News.
Good morning, Kevin.
Hi.
How are you today?
I am doing well, and how are you?
I'm all right. Kevin,
Yes.
about COP27, is it 27, COP27?
Yes, it's COP27 this year.
Yes. Now, from my observation, right, Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
now we have two things that mainstream media like to use in their description of countries, like developed countries and underdeveloped countries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we are paying attention to, let's go to United Nations, like G27, G20, when all of our leaders attend these forums to speak on climate change, global warming, whatever. Sometimes we would see whenever African leaders or Caribbean leaders speak, the room is empty. That is disrespect in itself. Now, we know that they say things in their spaces, Kevin. They say things with themselves in their spaces. And, I mean, we had a former president who say, you know, F the, you know, how he referred to Africa. And he was bold enough to come out and say it, but let us look at those behind the scenes and what they are saying. It's like they're saying, okay, well, we can pollute. We can call developed countries I'm referring to, the leaders. It's okay for us to pollute. So, you see, they are like narcissists. It's okay for them to do. And then they impose their laws and you know, Kevin, sorry, we have to get serious with this. We cannot stay quiet and just regurgitate and just, as you say, you know, we react when things happen, or we become like a talk shop. Our words have to have substance now, because they are causing the harm, they're causing the damage globally. I mean, if you look at of Africa, the continent of Africa, it's almost like they're saying, okay, you keep your resources and we're going to manage it for you. It's the same thing with climate change. We got to get real with this, Kevin. I mean, I listened to Mia Motley's at COP27. Before COP27 at the United Nations, when she made that speech, and you know, somehow I was lucky to get, I don't know if I think most people saw it, when the camera picked Joe Biden's face while Mia Motley spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And he bowed his head. Now, just let me go back to when President Joe Biden was a senator in the Reagan administration. He spoke out against apartheid in South Africa. And look at what he said just before he won the election when he was campaigning. What did he say to the black community? If you don't vote for me, you ain't black. A year ago, a white boy in Philadelphia, I think, or Atlanta, shot 6 Haitians. And in less than a year, Joe Biden signed a law in place to protect Haitians. Devon, we are a target. We are the targeted people. I mean, how much more can we take? Now, let us look at what is happening between Kanye West and Tyreek. For me, Kanye West have woken up. Tyreek has woken up, and they're telling them, how dare you wake up? How dare you wake up? Devon, these people have issues that they know they have. They know we have something that they don't have. So you see, they're going to always create things to keep us. They create scenarios and they create distractions. Let me take you back to when Will Smith slapped off Chris Rock at the Oscars. The world leaders was in Dubai making arrangements to usher in the new world order. Devon, everybody today is in their own spaces, but we need to get out of this mainstream media that is going to show us their narrative and their agenda. Now, me and Martley been speaking, and they've been listening. Our Prime Minister's speech was profound. Devon, if you look at these events that are happening and you match them with the scriptures, now, for me, I'm a spiritual person today, Devon. And I am not in the spirit of a myth. I am in the spirit of looking at the Creator in my own image. Because you see, this word image is very powerful. Because we have swallowed an image that does not look like us. But that's story for another day, Devon. But in all, Devon, we got to be serious here today. Because if you're familiar with the scripture, the story between Samson, David and Goliath, it took a small man to bring down the giant. Me and Motley and St Kitts and Nevis, let us join our forces because Kevin, we have no shots to fire. They see us as small countries, underdeveloped countries. And we have to read between the lines. We have to target them where we think they are saying, because we know what they say in their spaces. Now, there's a politician in South Africa by the name of Nadia Panda who told Secretary of State Blinken, when you go in your spaces, don't speak negative of the continent. Now, why would she say that? We see how they treat our leaders at the United Nations. So we have to wake up because we know they say things when they're in their spaces, Devon. Are you following what I'm saying, Devon, Kevin?
Yeah, yes, I'm following what you're saying.
I mean, our leaders have to come together. They did all that they did to us, Devon, in slavery and colonization, and it worked for them because they divided us. We so got to wake up and unite because our unity is our strength. You see what the matrix, there's a crack in the matrix, right, Kevin? Forgive me for I call with the other one for voices every week.
I know. Our names are way too similar, so I understand.
Yeah. There's a crack in the matrix, Kevin. Kanye West have woken up. And you see how they launch an economic warfare against him? The same for Tyreek, but what? If you follow what is going on social media with Kanye West, Kanye West's own people are pulling him down on social media. We need to done with that. These are some of the distractions that they throw at us and we swallow it wholesale. I'll call back Kevin and give someone else a chance.
All right, thank you. Thank you to that caller for joining the debate. He made a very good point as it relates to. We have another caller. Hold 1 second. Good morning. You are live on Inside the News.
Good morning, sir.
How are you?
And greetings to you in Jesus' name. The only Savior of sinners. He chosen his elect sinners from their sins and from hell, and with the second person of the eternal Trinity. Now, first of all, I would like to say, let me just, because I'm going to talk about climate change, but let me just get it out the way. The dried up Euphrates is not a prophetic sign. Most Christians think the dried up Euphrates is a prophetic sign, but it is not a prophetic sign. And this ties in with the climate change thing. Now, this climate change has always been happening first of all, the language was global warming. And when that has been shown that, hey, global warming has always been happening and that sort of stuff, they change the language to climate change to include everything. So if we get a lot of rain, it's climate change. If we get a lot of heat, it's climate change. Everything, even crime, everything is based on climate change now. There's nothing that is not blame on climate change. Climate change has always been happening. As a matter of fact, a number of centuries ago, the earth was significantly warmer than it is today. And not only that, during that warmness, you had a lot more food produced by the plants because CO2 and so on, plant food. You had the population grew, the world population grew. Life became easier when the climate was warmer. You had places like in Scotland and so that had vineyards that don't have any today because the climate is not warm enough today. So all of these shows you that in the past, the climate has been significantly warmer than it is today. It was a positive for life and for crops and so on.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second?
No problem.
So you say a number of centuries ago, the population wasn't 7 billion people and we didn't have to provide food. Well, actually, I think it's near 8 billion. It's almost at 8 billion at some point. The population was significantly smaller. It was nowhere near 8 billion. So the food production was suffice for the population back then. Now, you're saying that the earth is not warm enough. If the earth continues to get warmer, don't you think that more rivers will dry up? More crops that aren't accustomed to that heat will die off, which means our food supply will be significantly reduced, which would lead to the mass extinction of a lot of animals, including humans, to then get the earth back to how it was supposed to be back in the day. So you're saying that instead of trying to find a solution where we can feed the 8 billion people that we have on this earth and kind of mitigate some of the natural disasters that are occurring and impacting the 8 billion people on this earth, to try and, maybe keep a good portion of that 8 billion people alive. You think those actions are, unnecessary?
Well, number one, government trying to find solution to these things is unbiblical because God never gave the government the duty to find solution to these things. These things were not meant by God. But God gave man free will to do what they please, whether they want to live by his scripture or not. I understand what you're trying to say, that God has specific ideas and ideology for what he wants his people to live by. However, he still gave people free will to accept said ideologies or not. Well, I don't believe in free will. Free will, the teaching of free will depends on how you define it. Because when I ask people to define free will, they can't define it for me. But somebody who knows what they're saying, if they're talking about free will in the sense of being independent from God, sovereign control over the actions, thinking, and that sort of stuff, no such thing exists because the Bible teaches against that. No, but what I'm saying is that in the past, during the medieval warm period, the climate was hotter, significantly hotter than it is today.
But it wasn't hotter because...
what happened to the crops? The crops increased.
But it wasn't hotter because of industrialization.
But during the medieval time period, you didn't have these...
Exactly.
These engines and that sort of stuff.
Right, so the chemicals that industrialization has been introducing into the atmosphere, into the ground, into the rain, was not present back then. So a warmer climate
and the climate was warmer.
So a warmer climate right now might not give the same reaction back then because the variables are different. So back then...
Well, according to UN, forests and so are increasing right now. Food crops are increasing according to the UN stats. So because CO2 is a plant food. And I've said this more than once, and I've given the sources more than once, and WINN FM. According to the UN stats, crops has increased and the forestry has increased. So the warm period has been more conducive to human growth, crops, and that sort of stuff. Whereas during the Little Ice Age, which was also some time ago as well, you had the very opposite happen. It caused a lot of death. The crop receded. And not only that, according to stats, cold snaps kills more people than hot periods. You see, but when people want to push an agenda, they only give one side. That is why I try to listen to both sides and pick out who make more sense when lined up with the Bible. And there are other stuff. There are other stuff to go into. There are other stuff to go into. For example, people are pushing green energy, but what they're not telling you is that green energy is far more expensive and far less reliable than the fossil fuel and natural gas and that sort of stuff. And because it's more expensive and far less reliable, you find, for example, in Europe and so on, that has really pushed green energy and that sort of stuff. The electric bills, heating bills, and so on have risen and has increased deaths among many. As a matter of fact, during this winter season, it has been expected that because, one, they're pushing green energy, which has happened in the past, but two, because of the Russian thing as well, where they're not getting more fuel and that sort of stuff, that it would result in extra deaths for the winter period. And not only that, the combustion engine that is being made is improving as time goes along, whereas where the science is concerned, there are some experts who are telling you right now they're not foreseeing anywhere in the near future any more improvements in the green energy technology. So like solar and wind energy and that sort of stuff. You see, they think there's only one side of people pushing. With the windmills that a lot of people are pushing, they're killing lots of birds. You see, so we should always go and know both sides of the debate and who is making sense and who is making sense according to the stats. And for me as a Christian, who is more in line with the Bible? For me as a Christian. But even somebody who is not a Christian, who doesn't go by the Bible, even the stats alone tells you that getting rid of the fossil fuel, natural gas, and that sort of will cause more harm than good in trying to push this unreliable and yet more expensive green energy.
Well, the same argument could be made for what you're suggesting, because you suggested that people normally argue for their own agenda. So people who are more inclined to, or companies who are based in oil and crude oil, could be having experts do their own analysis and determine that green energy is unreliable, so that crude oil and natural gases remain king.
Yep. But I know people like, for example, Michael Moore. You should know Michael Moore. He is totally against the oil companies and that sort of stuff, and yet he did a documentary not too long ago showing that, hey, this green energy thing that people are pushing are far more dangerous than good.
So what was his solution then? So if he's against green energy and he's against
his
crude
solution
oil.
He's what you call a liberal socialist person. His solution was decreasing the earth population. That was his solution.
By doing what?
Okay? That was his solution, which is a very evil and wicked solution. But with all due respect, that's Bill Gates' solution too. That is, as a matter of fact, there are people who are being involved in this environmental thing that have spoken out in the past about reducing the earth population. And I believe, with all due respect, I believe that is one of the reasons for the COVID vaccine. because we are finding out now that it is killing a lot of people the world over, the COVID vaccine, with all due respect. And I think Agenda 2020 something, I think also speak to, and the Great Reset Forum, the World Economic Forum and that sort of stuff. These people are seriously considering world population reduction. Bill, Fauci and all of these fellas. You know, Charles Schwab and all of these fellas. So it's not something to laugh about. Michael Moore is right there with them. So what I'm saying is that, with all due respect, the only solution is the Bible, is Jesus Christ, and following the Bible, and we should know what the Bible says concerning government and all other issues in life, and just stick to what the Bible says. But we first have to repent. We first have to get right with Jesus Christ, because other than getting right with Jesus Christ and obeying the Bible, we'll just continue to go more and more down the road to our destruction, peril, and disaster. And the climate change is used as a tool for such. It is an anti-capitalist, free market tool that is used to close down businesses and that sort of stuff, to push world dominance by governments and that sort of stuff, especially under the agenda called the Great Reset. You know,
right.
So it's like I said, I'm not denying there's climate change. Climate change has always been happening, but it is used as a tool to close down businesses, to stamp out capitalism and free market, and to introduce socialism, communism, and world government under such evil, wicked systems.
All right, thank you.
And like I said, the more we move away from the Bible, the worse things will get. The only solutions and answers are in the Bible only. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. All right, thank you so much for your contribution to the discussion that we're having. Again, we're discussing, COP27 that is happening Saturday on the 6th, going through the 18th. We have another caller. Good morning, caller. You're live on Inside the News.
Kevin.
Hi, yes, good morning.
Yeah. Let me say this. I don't know if you're aware, but follow me on this. African spirituality is with the cosmology and ecology. European civilization is about fear, false evidence appearing real. Let me repeat this. European civilization is about fear, false evidence appearing real. Now, the earth is a living entity, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing planted in the earth cannot germinate without the sun, the S-U-N. Now, let us look at Europe, who used our ancestors to build their cities, they build their civilization. The concrete jungles in America, in Europe, in Canada. Are they not stifling the earth from breathing with their concrete jungles? Now you go to the continent of Africa, and again, African spirituality is with cosmology and ecology. The earth is reacting to the pollution that those developed countries with their concrete jungles, they're suffocating the earth. So yes, they are the ones causing the damage in global warming and climate change. Respectfully, Kevin, I like to say that everyone is in their spaces, and we react to things that, again, suit our space. Now, Kevin, I don't know if you have a King James Bible, because in the King James Bible it says they predict these happenings going to happen. They prophesy that these things will be happening. But let us look at who were the ones who, let us say, wrote the Bible, the inspired word of the Bible. It was written by the scribes and Pharisees in the Roman Empire at that time. The Vatican the Church of England. Now, when they put in the book, in the scripture, say, whosoever taketh away or addeth from the word, let him be accursed. Well, what gave them the right to appropriate the word of God? Who gave them the right to appropriate the word of God in what we have in the King James Bible? Because all that we have in this King James Bible is from the European. And the King James Bible, as we know it, was printed in 1160. But what happened before 1160? Were we not a people? Were we not a continent? We are the salt of the earth. I'm referring to the black melanated man, woman, and child, Kevon. Because I'm sure you are aware that that narcissist, without calling any name, is trying to block out the way of the sun. Why is he want to do that? But let me tell the listeners something, Kevon. You and I observe energy from the sun. Those creatures does not get the energy. They want the energy from the sun. But look at how they go about it. When they come to our shores, Kevon, and they bask in our sun, they put on sunscreen. You and I don't have to do that. So that narcissist creature, without calling his name, I hope you know who I'm referring to, the billionaire, who is trying to block out the way of the sun. They're telling us, well, if they can't have it, we cannot have it. And we just swallow everything they taught us. And then we come and regurgitate their garbage. But there's a shift in the power right now. My prime minister said there's a what's the word he used? I'm trying to remember what Juice when he said about there's a shift in the power in a shift in the system right now. The word is escaping me right now, Kevon.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so right about that. But you see, they have to maintain chaos because they cannot create. That's why they give us false evidence appearing real. We got to wake up. We got to wake up, Kevon. This lingering residue of this old world order, it's going to crumble. It's already crumbled. You see what they did on January 6th. And you saw the last president who was in office. Kevon, you, myself, and every black African globally is the target of all that is happening today. Because they know who we are, and they know what they lack. They know what we have. Now, let me talk about this blocking of the ray of the sun. You see, because we observe the sun, and they want the sun, he decided, okay, they're going to block the ray of the sun. And again, in saying that, they have to appreciate us, because if we are not here, they won't be here either. We are like the mediator from the sun for them. Because if they have to be in the sun will consume them. Why we are running from the sun, Kevon, is because we are eating everything that is not of us. We are eating their food and it's making us toxic. Because you're supposed to go out in the sun and you can lie in the sun. You can bask, you can bathe in the sun. And that's your energizer. Kevon, do your research. It is there. In this era of technology and information, ignorance is a choice. They know what we have and they know what they're lacking. And this is why they're targeting us. They have to create chaos to maintain order. They cannot create. They are destructive. They are the carbon copy that you wrap up and throw away. They have an expiry date, Kevon. They know it. 5% of us knows it, but they don't want the rest to know. So they have to create distraction. Will Smith get up and slap off Chris Rock. You remember earlier this year, Whoopi Goldberg speak out against the Jewish community, and she had to lap her tail and humble to get back on onto the view. Now Kanye West wake up and Tyreek wake up and see what they're doing to them, but they cannot touch Kanye West. I hope you're following what's happening, Kevon. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you so much, caller, for your contribution. We will take a quick break and we'll be back with more on Inside the News.
Buying your medication is easy with City Drug Store's curbside pickup. WhatsApp our certified pharmacist at 662-8769 with your requests. For prescriptions, take a clear photograph and send for review. We will engage you in dialogue and then provide a quotation and link for payment. You can then pay via TDC's online payment portal. And once the transaction is complete, you'll be notified that your pickup is ready. Yes, it's that easy. Send your WhatsApp message to 662-8769 to order your medications today with City Drug Store's curbside pickup service.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go round.
And we're back on Inside the News here on WINN FM at 98.9. I'm your host this morning, Kevon Brown. Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Kevon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, you're giving God thanks, man. I heard my preacher brother Journey. I like your conspiracy theories, you know. I tell you already, that's my good friend. Mm-hmm. But a lot of his conclusion as racist as the white supremacists.
Well, I guess he'd argue. I guess he'd argue. Are they racist?
Both sides. Over there say, well, we are nothing. Over here say there is nothing. And we are caught in the middle. Now, well, let me get to the climate change, because that's the topic, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have been listening, and you could see the lobbies at work, eh? In the U.S., the petroleum or the oil lobby is very strong, you know.
Oh, yes, I know. It's always been strong, though.
Hello?
It's always been strong.
Strong. So it is evident, and market forces determine what takes place. Because they have invested heavily in all the countries. So when we are saying that we want to reduce the use of petroleum products, they have enough money to block anything, because once they control the lobbies in the House, laws are made to suit them, and by manipulating the supply of the product, they could do anything. I was even telling somebody when we're talking about this thing in Nevis, what you call it?
Oh, the geothermal?
Hello?
What were you referring to?
What do we want to set up, to get...
Geothermal.
Geothermal.
Mm-hmm.
I told somebody when I said there was only one reason why you could not get investment in geothermal, is that the price of petroleum product was low. At one point, it was below zero. You recall that? The market price was so low. Well, if you have to purchase fuel, whatever kind, you're not going, it's economics, you're not going to invest money into something that will bring you no profit, because every investment is based on profit making. So people only invest if they see the opportunity to get profit. Now that they're having all of this war in Ukraine and whatever, it is easier to get access to investment for geothermal. So all of the wrangling going on up there. The people have the oil in the ground. Other companies, whether national or international, have already invested. You see in Guyana, they're buying the ground, they're buying the oil while it's still in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they will fight. If Guyana said they're going to solar, you're crazy. We got to understand that is what is happening. A lot of oil in Africa too, Nigeria, they say has the world largest.
Oil and coal, because I think
Hello?
I think a lot of parts of Africa went back to using coal because of the lack of
yeah, the
crude
coal
oil
here,
gas
and
whatnot.
all
So there's a lot of coal.
China and India and America. You see Trump went back to resurrect the oil, the coal thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's economics. And as long as they could control the powers that be, all the talk they're having is talk. What I found very curious, there was the one about they must get rid of the animals, the cattle in particular. I said, we got from one extreme to the next. It's like my good friend's speech, from one extreme to the next.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they say you got to get rid of the cattle. Well, if you say you got to get rid of the cattle, then the beef industry lobby will come in. Do you understand this thing about getting rid of the cattle?
From the little knowledge that I have about it, I think it's because there's an increase in the need for
Could
beef.
you speak a little louder now?
Sorry, I said there's an increase in the need for beef. People like the steak and whatnot, especially the fancy steak, the Wagyus and whatnot. So there's an increase in that demand, which means there needs to be more cattle, and more cattle feed. And apparently, the cattles are producing methane, which is causing a negative impact on the climate. So I think that's the train.
But how much cattle? So I said, Lord, you mean they got me before they decide to produce less coal and less oil?
Well, how much restaurants use beef?
You mean all the steakhouse?
Yeah, the steakhouses, the burger places in all of the developed countries, the US,
you
the
understand?
UK,
And
Europe.
it is all their talk shop. It's the battle of the lobbies. So all who think, now look at the one we plan to have here in St. Kitts, the solar farm. I heard that the former government had signed a contract with some Switzerland government to build a solar farm. You recall that?
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yes.
Right, and which was to feed the power into our Skelec
Right.
power station. What have you heard of that lately? It's another lobby. They target governments. And this thing about being unreliable. It is unreliable in countries that have that kind of a weather,
That have easily
you got
changeable
winter.
weathers. Yes, winter, fall, and all of that. Yeah.
We got all year sunshine,
Well, not all year, because sometimes we got some days where we got some rain.
some rain, but even so, remember that whatever you produce is stored there.
Once the storage is maintained, it should be no problem.
That's what I'm saying. So we now in a quandary. Do we want solar? Do we want geothermal? Which one are we going to do first? Then we have the oil industry who are accustomed to supply us the diesel. Some of them go as far to blackmail you. And the thing about the paying, how many times have they promised? They had actually promised to give 1% of the GDP to the developing countries to get them to have the sustainable development goals. You recall that?
Mm-hmm.
They're paying. When Haiti got damaged, everybody promised, nobody paying. So what we are having are talk shops with the lobbies controlling the speakers. And it is so sad, because, well, the Bible doesn't say, as my good friend say, you must read that Bible, Stop criticizing and read it. The earth shall be destroyed with a fervent heat. That's what we're working up to. And as Gregory would say, we need to repent. That's all. So I'm looking to see what we're going through. Have you gotten any inclination from this government, the new one, that they intend to pursue the farm, the solar farm, in the same location?
I think so. I think they still want to go ahead with the farm. And I think there have been talks about geothermal as well. I think there's a consensus that they want to do geothermal. There was talk about creating St Kitts and Nevis grid where the geothermal in Nevis will feed into St Kitts as well. So there have been talks. So it's to see where those talks lead.
Because I'm looking forward to it, you know. But don't think that the petroleum product thing will go so easy. Once company that have invested so much in it, they fight tooth and nail to maintain it. So it's good for our minister to go, you know. Mm-hmm. Go and hear what people have to say, because the talk shop. All right, then.
Thank you so much. We have to break for the headline news here on WINN FM 98.9. I was your host for Inside the News, and I shall be back after the headline news to continue our discussion. I want to play the speech from Mia Motley and a little bit of this interesting perspective that I found. It feeds into the conversations that we've been having about these summits and the impacts of these summits. So stick and stay here on WINN FM 98.9. We will be back with more Inside News after the headline news up next.
You found the sound. 98.9. WINN FM.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, KDP Enterprises, Carib Brewery, and the ICDF Taiwan Technical Mission.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world, whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous. You can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air, we get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises at 466-9595.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
With over a century of perfection behind the Mackeson name, a smooth blend with perfect balance and richness, it's no wonder Mackeson Triple Stout has a legacy of perfection. Enjoy the world over. Introducing our new look with the same great taste. Mackeson. All hail the king.
Please drink responsibly.
Think before you bin it. There can be some use in it. The Nevis Solid Waste Management Authority, in collaboration with Taiwan ICDF Technical Mission and the Department of Environment, presents Let's Recycle. We're encouraging all residential homes, commercial businesses, and schools to bring along your plastic bottles, metal cans, and aluminum cans ready for an opportunity to win big. From 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the following locations. In Nevis, every second and fourth Friday of each month at Delta Petroleum, Ex-Petrol in Camps, Big Six in Gingerland, and the Old Artisan Village in Charlestown. In St Kitts, every second and fourth Tuesday at the Connery Roundabout, every first and third Tuesday at Buckley's parking lot in front of Best Buy, and the last Saturday of each month in Dieppe Bay. But wait, that's not all. 1 pound equals 1 point. So bring your recyclables and build up your points for a chance to win stainless steel thermal bottles, flatware, and much more. To learn more about the recycling project, do visit our Facebook page at Let's Recycle in St. Kitts and Nevis, or contact us at 465-2372. The choice is yours. Save it or waste it. You are the difference. So think smart. Take PAT, reduce, reuse, recycle.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Till you walk with a local reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. DLU Walwyn, people you can trust.
With the WINN Headline News, I am Kevon Brown. Making the headlines, Carnival Committee proposes new route for Sugarmass 51 Grand Carnival Parade. Kittian Judy Jacobs Hanel wins prestigious Minister's Award for Public Primary School Teachers in Adelaide, South Australia. The Bahamas assess damage following passage of Tropical Storm Nicole. U.S. warns Guyana about bad actors having a role in the country's development. Internationally, the owners of a migrant rescue ship say European countries have failed to deal with a humanitarian emergency after Italy refused to allow the Ocean Viking carrying asylum seekers to enter one of its ports. Now, the details. The St Kitts and Nevis National Carnival Committee has proposed to stakeholders an extended route for the Sugarmass 51 Grand Carnival Parade on January 2nd, 2023. Once all stakeholders are in agreement, the proposed route will have troops lining up for the start of the procession in the vicinity of the Best Buy supermarket in Buckley's, to move along Keon Street into Ponds Extension, turn right on Paul Southwell Drive, move onto the Bay Road, and then move west to downtown Bastyr.
The parade will start at 11 a.m. And as such, we hope that by the time the parade gets to downtown, it is dusk, because we have more and more trucks in these troops. Troops are increasing and getting larger, having, whether it's a 40-foot flatbed, much more trucks, and whether it's moving portable toilets, etc., on the road. We feel that it is very important to move more on the outskirts of Bastyr rather than circling downtown Bastyr, which it has some safety concerns.
Said the chair of the St Kitts and Nevis National Carnival Committee, Shannon Hawley, during an interview on WINN's Island Tea with Azim Bailey. The chair went on to share some of the considerations for the proposed change in route.
You have to take into consideration pedestrians, the streets are narrower. We have to take into consideration the issues with overcrowding. So we want to make sure that everybody who is a part of our grand parade, whether you're a spectator, a reveler, or a vendor, everybody is safe. So we're giving much more room for vendors to spread out along the route. We're giving much more space for our revelers to have a grand time after being inside for 2 years. And we're also giving much more space for our spectators to observe, to look on, instead of being cramped on whether it's 4th Street, downtown Bastyr. So we look forward to having discussions with the relevant stakeholders about this proposed route, and we are pretty confident that everybody will be in agreement that.
Considering the 25 troops that have registered for the Carnival Grand Parade, Holly believes that Sugarmass has outgrown the traditional route.
The National Carnival Grand Parade has definitely outgrown downtown Bastille in terms of circling, and we have so many more opportunities to spread out and have a good time in a safe way. So we're looking at that, and of course we're also looking at ways in which we can enhance our Juve route, and that is a discussion that we will have shortly with our bands and Juve troop leaders, hopefully next week, for their input as to how we can better the Juve route and the Juve parade route for everyone as well.
The general public will be made aware if the proposed route is confirmed after the Carnival Committee gets the approval of stakeholders involved in Sugarmass 51. Judy Hanel, daughter of Viola Jacobs and the late Urban Jacobs, grew up in Bastille, St Kitts, and studied piano with Pamela Wall from about 1982 until she left for university in 1994. She then studied music at the University of Western Ontario and shortly after moved to Adelaide, Australia with her husband, where they now reside with their 2 children. On Friday, October 28th, at an annual World Teachers' Day Award event, Judy won the Minister's Arts Award for a public primary school teacher. This award is in recognition of outstanding achievement and endeavor in arts education. The Minister's Arts Awards are designed to acknowledge and celebrate the achievements of teachers in the arts in South Australian schools. The awards recognize excellence in teaching, in improving children and young people's learning. They highlight outstanding achievement, creativity, and leadership of teaching and learning in arts education. The awards are a considerable prize in terms of funding to support the professional development of the recipient. This may involve their students and/or the school community, but the prize is predominantly about funding the individual's professional development. It is envisaged that these awards will provide winners with opportunities to further develop innovation, best practices, and leadership of the arts. The award funding is provided for expenditure during the 2023 calendar year. Judy has chosen to use her prize money to attend the Broadway Teachers Workshop in Manhattan, New York in 2023 so that she can improve her practice in performing arts, integrating music, dance, and drama together in a meaningful way in the classroom and for whole school performances. In regional news, the Bahamas assessed damage following passage of Tropical Storm Nicole. The Virgin Islands Consortium has that report.
The all-clear for the Bahamas came just after 8 p.m. Wednesday night, signaling that the immediate danger from Tropical Storm Nicole had passed. A hurricane warning was issued on Monday ahead of the storm, prompting hundreds to leave their homes in search of more suitable shelter. At 10 a.m. Wednesday, social services officials announced that 300 Bahamians had been settled in shelters, a number that swelled to 900 by 5 p.m. that day. Some shelters had by then reached capacity, and other unofficial spaces opened up to accommodate the demand as high winds and masses of water drove Bahamians out of their homes in search of safer accommodations. On Wednesday afternoon, Bahamas Prime Minister Philip Davis spoke at a National Emergency Management Agency press conference and thanked those involved in the preparation for the severe weather event and those who had taken action to preserve life and ensure safety during the passage of the storm. Davis extended further gratitude to the Bahamian people as a whole for exercising good judgment and being attentive to the directives given by disaster officials.
I want to thank all of the Bahamian people and residents who have heeded the warnings of me. We ask you to continue to monitor the warnings, to stay indoors until you have the all clear. And even after you have the all clear, we ask you to continue to exercise caution and care because to avoid injuries.
Nicole brought hurricane conditions, including a dangerous storm surge, to northwestern Bahamas on Wednesday, with coastal flooding reported in several islands of the archipelago into Wednesday night. Abaco, the group of islands and cays which was devastated by Hurricane Dorian in 2019, was among the locations impacted most severely by Nicole. Videos quickly began to circulate on social media showing crashing waves, all but eliminating the distinction between land and sea, as residents filmed the water once again flooding roadways, yards, and homes. One brave journalist, Berthany McDermott from Our News Bahamas, stood outside as the storm raged on Wednesday, reporting what was taking place all around.
All right, so now we're at the eastern shores, and as you can tell, the winds from Tropical Storm Nicole are really strong. If you're behind me, water again coming over into the road. Again, residents urged to stay inside. This will be the situation for at least another 30 to 45 minutes before I'm fully affected by a Tropical Storm Nicole.
In New Providence, one resident told local outlet ZNS Wednesday's storm had had a major impact on that island.
It wasn't like this? Never like this. One time we had a little flood come by, but never like this. You know, when you see this pass by now, the whole area is going to be brown. That means the salt water that's washed everything away. And this would be the second time I had to redo my whole lawn. So it's really bad.
Nicole is the first storm to hit the Bahamas Islands since the traumatic passage of Dorian, a Category 5 hurricane, which all but destroyed Abaco and Grand Bahama in September 2019. Early Thursday, Nicole made landfall just south of Vero Beach, Florida, as a Category 1 hurricane, lashing the coast with maximum sustained winds of 75 miles per hour before weakening again into a tropical storm. Nicole's large size, according to the National Hurricane Center, means hazards extend well beyond the storm's focus cone.
U.S. warns Guyana about bad actors having a role in the country's development. Guyana News Source has that report.
U.S. Ambassador to Guyana Sarah Ann Lynch has encouraged the Guyana government to put systems in place to tackle corruption, while warning against bad actors playing a role in the country's development. Speaking on the Plaza Central podcast, the American ambassador said she's cautiously optimistic about whether some of the vision of the government will be achieved, owing to governance and other challenges in the country. But she did say that the government has been opening up to learning in some areas. The podcast is part of the Wilson Center's Latin American program.
There are many challenges, and two key ones are inclusion and the potential for corruption. As you mentioned, in many countries across the globe that have gone from, abject poverty, if you will, to incredible wealth almost overnight, it's tough to do it well. So they really are going to have to keep their eye on the ball. But there are many models for them to follow of what not to do.
The U.S. ambassador also said because of the magnitude of the country's oil wealth, no person or persons should be left behind. She explained that the U.S. government has been assisting Guyana in many areas for better management and provide training for opportunities for what she termed the marginalized groups. She described Afro-Guyanese women as part of the group of citizens that is marginalized.
It is an ethnically divided society, and so they will need to focus on inclusion. And there have been many efforts to do so far, but they will need to continue to do that and at an increased pace. The government has provided lots of grants, if you will, to marginalized groups recently that were affected by COVID-19, by flooding, by the downturn in the economy. But those short-term grants don't mean long-term sustainability.
According to the U.S. ambassador, who is preparing to wrap up her tour of duty in Guyana, indigenous communities must also not be left behind in the country's development. She cautioned, however, that even as development is taking place, bad actors must not be part of the process.
We are encouraging them to make sure that the indigenous communities, for example, in the hinterland areas in rural Guyana, can also benefit. So inclusion is very important. And then, when all this money is coming into the country, there are certainly potentially bad actors looking at possibilities here, as well as the many friendly nations and reputable firms. So they will need to put legislation in place and also enforce certain things. So to enforce that legislation to prevent corruption.
The Ghanaian government has long been accused by the opposition of marginalizing communities and persons who are not supportive of the government. Opposition leader Obi Norton has raised the concerns with diplomats here in Guyana. A number of U.S. government officials have also been raising those same concerns.
We now bring you these international reports.
The end of an ordeal at sea. After 3 weeks, the Ocean Viking rescue ship finally docked in the southern French port of Toulon after being refused entry to Italy. On board, 230 asylum seekers, including more than 50 children, most of them travelling alone. The NGO that operates the ship said Italy's actions and the EU's slow response to the crisis was a scandal.
Basic principle is a duty to rescue from anyone at sea, and then an obligation from states to coordinate to find a place of safety in the shortest time possible. This is the law, this is international law, this is maritime convention. What we are requesting from EU member states is just to respect the law.
French officials say the migrants will be housed in a reception centre. Those eligible to seek refugee status will be able to stay in the EU. The others will be deported.
Our aim is to rapidly put in place procedures that will allow us to ascertain each person's status.
The fate of the Ocean Viking sparked a row between France and Italy. The French government has accused Rome of flouting EU rules by turning away the ship and says it will take retaliatory measures, including bolstering its border. Well, that's infuriated the far-right Italian Prime Minister, who says Paris's actions are incomprehensible and unjustified. Giorgia Meloni wants to stop the arrival of migrants on Italian shores and says the EU should do more to help.
Cioè, che cos'è che fa arrabbiare?
What exactly makes them so angry? The fact that Italy must be the only possible port for migrants in the Mediterranean? Because this is not written in any agreement. I want to question my counterparts on this. Should Italy be the only possible choice for migrants arriving from Africa? I don't think this is right.
The rescue ship has also divided opinion in France. Some far-right supporters protested against its arrival in Toulon. But while the political rows and diplomatic rifts continue, the reality for those who spent so long on board is a future that's still uncertain. Natasha Butler, Al Jazeera, Toulon.
Raids on currency dealers have become common in Ghana. The cedi has become one of the world's worst performing currencies, losing 60% of its value against major currencies like the British pound, euro, and American dollar since the start of the year. The government believes currency speculation is making that worse and is clamping down. But currency traders like Rabiu Maude says the raids are targeting the wrong people.
It is just low-hanging fruits. The people that actually help with the parallel markets or the black markets are powerful politicians and powerful business people that have those resources, those funds to be able to buy the kinds of volumes that will drive prices up. The person who does black market is the low-hanging fruit. He's the lowest on the chain.
His customers range from businessmen to travelers and even government officials. Ghana imports most of its manufactured goods and foodstuff. The pandemic, war in Ukraine, and rising oil prices have all damaged its heavily indebted economy. And with industrial output down, the demand for foreign currencies has increased. Raids on foreign currency dealers like this have forced many of them underground. This led to shortages, adding pressure to the local currency, the cedi.
Most affected when inflation goes.
The government says its actions are necessary.
What we have sought to do is to take off the table the element of speculation by A, getting the central bank to regularly provide updates on the interbank forex rates, and B, going in hard on those who are operating in the black market and are just shooting up the rates.
Experts accuse the government of skirting around a bigger problem.
What has cost the cedi is our fiscal irresponsibility. Restore fiscal responsibility and the cedi's confidence will come back.
Currency traders say their transactions account for only 5% of foreign currency transactions in Ghana. But the black market is estimated to transact nearly 30% of such deals, and that's the volume the government wants to reduce. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Accra.
U.S. stocks ended higher on Friday, extending a rally after a cooler-than-expected inflation reading raised hopes the Federal Reserve would get less aggressive with its interest rate hikes. The Dow rose fractionally, the S&P 500 added nearly 1%, while the Nasdaq posted a near 2% gain. Kevin Nicholson, Global Fixed Income Chief Investment Officer at Riverfront Investment Group, said it was interest rate-sensitive tech stocks that fueled Friday's gains.
The NASDAQ is rallying right now, largely because we saw interest rates come down yesterday. We had the 10-year Treasury move roughly 30 basis points yesterday. And with the bond market being closed today, I think that you're getting some continued acceleration as it pertains to technology, because it is a long duration asset. And as interest rates come down, long duration assets tend to do better. And that's why you're seeing technology outperform the rest of the market.
The Nasdaq is still down more than 27% this year, and the S&P 500 remains down about 16% year to date, on course for its biggest annual decline since 2008. Shares of Amazon jumped more than 4% Friday, with Apple and Microsoft also making gains and contributing to the Nasdaq's move higher. U.S.-listed shares of Chinese companies, including JD.com, and stocks with a high exposure to China, such as Wynn Resorts, jumped after Beijing lifted some of its strict health restrictions. But shares of crypto and blockchain-related stocks fell after cryptocurrency exchange FTX said it would start U.S. bankruptcy proceedings and that CEO Sam Bankman-Fried would resign, leaving some investors questioning the viability of the risky sector, already bruised by the Bitcoin bubble bursting.
When it comes to being president of the United States, how old is too old?
I think it's a question that honestly irritates me.
New York City resident Catherine Stimpson, who's 86, is not the only one who's miffed at the question. But with President Joe Biden turning 80 on Sunday and his potential opponent, former President Donald Trump, now 76, some Americans have concerns about the advanced age of the two most likely 2024 candidates. Biden would be 86 by the end of a second four-year term, while Trump, by 2028, would be 82. According to a Reuters Ipsos poll this week, 71% of Democrats think Biden is mentally sharp and able to deal with challenges, while 46% say he may not be up to the challenge of running for re-election. Illinois resident Paul Klenk, a Democrat, appeared to reflect both those views.
I think he's done a great job in the time that he has had. I am concerned that someone well into their mid-80s serve as president. I can't think of a more demanding job.
And about a quarter of Republicans think Trump may not be up for the 2024 race because of his age. The poll also found that, political affiliation aside, some 86% of Americans said they believe the cutoff for serving as president should be age 75 or younger. Ronald Reagan was 77 when he left office. And a majority of Americans, 66%, support the idea of having an upper age limit for federal office holders, including the president, members of Congress, and Supreme Court justices. Don't tell that to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who's 82, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, who's 80, Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, who's 89, and Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, who's also 89, and won another 6-year term on Tuesday. As a society, the United States is aging and working until later in life. By 2026, more than 1 in 4 men over 65 will still be working, according to the nonprofit Population Reference Bureau. And the 65 and older population is projected to nearly double by 2060. When asked about concerns over Biden's age ahead of his 80th birthday, the White House said his recent record speaks for itself. One New York City resident put it this way.
Speaking as somebody who's 85, and with all of my mental capacities and intelligent and on the ball all the time, age itself would not be a factor for me.
You were listening to the WINN FM headline news on 98.9. Our top stories were: Carnival Committee proposes new route for Sugar Mass 51 Grand Carnival Parade. Kittitian Judy Jacobs Hanel wins prestigious Minister's Award for Public Primary School Teachers in Adelaide, South Australia. The Bahamas assess damage following passage of Tropical Storm Nicole. U.S. warns Guyana about bad actors having a role in the country's development. Internationally, the owners of a migrant rescue ship say European countries have failed to deal with a humanitarian emergency after Italy refused to allow the Ocean Viking carrying asylum seekers to enter one of its ports. Thank you for listening.
That was the WINN FM Headline News. The Headline News is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, KDP Enterprises, Carib Brewery, and the ICDF Taiwan Technical Mission.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Till you walk with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
Think before you bin it. There can be some use in it. The St Kitts and Nevis Solid Waste Management, in collaboration with Taiwan ICDF Technical Mission and the Department of Environment, presents Let's Recycle. We are encouraging all residential homes, commercial businesses, and schools to bring along your plastic bottles, metal cans, and aluminum cans, ready for an opportunity to win big. From 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every second and fourth Tuesday each month at the following locations in St. Kitts: the Connery Roundabout, every first and third Tuesday at Buckley's parking lot in front of Best Buy, and the last Saturday of each month in Deep Bay. In Nevis, every second and fourth Friday of each month at Delta Petroleum, Ex-Petrol in Camps, Big Six in Gingerland, and Old Artisan Village in Charlestown. But wait, that's not all. 1 pound equals 1 point. So bring your recyclables and build up your points for a chance to win stainless steel thermal bottle, flatware set, and much more. To learn more about the recycling project, do visit our Facebook page at Let's Recycle in St. Kitts and Nevis, or contact us at 465-2372. The choice is yours. Save it or waste it. You are the difference. Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, day daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world, whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous. You can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air, we get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises at 466-9595.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is WINN FM.
People make the world go
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go round.
TDC Financial Services. We're here for you to help you make your dreams come true. Whether your needs are big or small, we'll support you with them all. TDC Financial Services. We are strong. TDC Financial Services. This is where you belong.
TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
People make the world go
Good afternoon, radio listeners, and welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. I am your host, Kevon Brown. I hope everyone is having a good Saturday here in St. Kitts and Nevis and in the wider community, because I know we have listening audience all throughout the diaspora. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, before we took a break for the headline news, we were speaking about COP27, and I had some callers that, called in to weigh in their opinions on what they think about the whole discussion of climate change and renewable energy, sustainable energy solutions, green financing, which kind of devolved into discussions about belief and faith and lobbying and, the politicking of it all. And we were I was speaking about, the reactionary responses as it relates to climate change in the Caribbean, and how we're always in a state of recovery, dealing with the climate change issues. St. Lucia got flooded, Bahamas got flooded, so now they're in recovery mode. And who knows what happens or how long it will take for them to get back to a space of stability. I think some places in St. Lucia, some villages was it St. Lucia or Dominica, that had to be there's consideration for relocating some people in villages because of landslides. So that's a lot of infrastructural damage and infrastructural development needed. So, when there is, whenever they might reach a space of stability, who knows what might happen right as they think that they've reached, stability, because things are constantly happening. There's no pause button on the world and what can happen in the world. So who knows what might happen next, because just early up this year, late last year, we were thinking of the globe as a whole was moving away from, the negative impacts of COVID-19 and trying to recover from the whole pandemic that took over for 2 years, and was looking at economic growth and stuff like that. And then bam, in February, Russia invaded Ukraine, and all of a sudden that was a whole other economic situation that we are continuing to feel now, and in a state of recovery still, an economic state of recovery still. So the discussion is like, how do we break this cycle of constant recovery mode? I think that's a good question. I don't know if there's an actual answer of how we break the cycle, because, like I said, we can have all these ideas of how we can bolster our economies, how we can go towards food sustainability, how we can try and improve energy sustainability. But if we don't have the financing, if we don't have the human capital to do all of these things, if we have no investments to do all of these things, then they're stuck being concepts. But before we go further, I'm gonna have the presentation that the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, said at the opening of COP27 World Leaders Summit. I'm going to have a little bit of that play.
UN Climate Summit, the agenda could not be clearer. Experts. And next. People make the world go
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to thank you, Your Excellency, President El-Sisi, for your wonderful hospitality and for all courtesies extended to us. And I want to congratulate Simon Steele, a son of the Caribbean, of whom we're very proud, in his new role as Executive Director. I came here to say a few things, but the chorus that we've had from this stage has been clear. I don't need to repeat that we have the power of choice. Every speaker on this platform has done that. I don't need to repeat that this is the COP that needs action. All of us, as a chorus, have said that. I don't need to repeat the horror and the devastation wreaked upon this earth over the course of the last 12 months since we met in Glasgow, whether the apocalyptic floods in Pakistan, or the heat waves from Europe to China, or indeed, in the last few days in my own region, the devastation caused in Belize by Tropical Storm Lisa, or the torrential floods a few days ago in St. Lucia. We don't need to repeat it, because a picture spoke 1,000 words earlier. But what we do need to do is to understand why we are not moving any further. 1.5 to stay alive cannot be that mantra. And I take no pride in being associated with having to repeat it over and over and over. We have the collective capacity to transform. We're in the country that built pyramids. We know what it is to remove slavery from our civilization. We know what it is to be able to find a vaccine within 2 years when a pandemic hits us. We know what it is to put a man on the moon, and now we put in rover on Mars. We know what it is. But the simple political will that is necessary, not just to come here and make promises, but to deliver on them and to make a definable difference in the lives of the people who we have a responsibility to serve, seems still not to be capable of being produced. I ask us how many more and how much more must happen. And I say so because there is no simplicity in it. We get it. I come from a small island state that has high ambition, but that is not able to deliver on that high ambition because the global industrial strategy that we have has fault lines in it. Our ability to access electric cars, or our ability to access batteries or photovoltaic panels, are constrained by those countries that have the dominant presence and can produce for themselves, but the global south remains at the mercy of the global north on these issues. But it isn't only in that. We heard Al Gore just now speak about the difference in the cost of capital to those of us in the global south. And I ask us, how many more people must speak before those of us who have the capacity to instruct our directors at the World Bank, is that called the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development only for the 20th century? At the IMF, which at least has been trying more than the World Bank? How many more countries must falter, particularly in a world that is now suffering the consequences of war and inflation, and countries therefore are unable to meet the challenges of finding the necessary resources to finance their way to net zero? This world looks still too much like it did when it was part of an imperialistic empire. The global north borrows between interest rates of between 1 to 4%. The global south of 14%. And then we wonder why the just energy partnerships are not working. Similarly, we ask ourselves if countries that want to finance their way to net zero and want to do the right thing can't get the critical supplies, will they not have to rely again on natural gas as that clean bridge? This is the bald reality. And we have come here to ask us to open our minds to different possibilities. We believe that we have a plan. We believe that there can be the establishment of a climate mitigation trust that unlocks $5 trillion of private sector savings if we can summon the will to use the SDRs, 500 billion of SDRs, special drawing rights, in a way that unlocks the private sector capital. We believe that that requires a change in the attitude of Congress. Because the agreement that establishes the International Monetary Fund requires 85% to change that agreement. And if the United States government has 17% of the quota, then it can't be done, Mr. Gore, without your Congress. Similarly, we accept that there was and must be a commitment to unlocking concessional funding for climate vulnerable countries. There is no way that developing countries who have been graduated can fight this battle without access to concessional funding. We heard it on this stage from the head of my old alma mater at LSU. We believe that it is critical that we address the issue of loss and damage. The talk must come to an end. And I'd like to salute Denmark and Belgium and Scotland for their own modest ways of trying to accept the precepts and principles of loss and damage as critical and as morally just. But for loss and damage to work, we believe that it can't only be an issue of asking state parties to do the right thing, although they must. But we believe that the non-state actors and the stakeholders, the oil and gas companies, and those who facilitate them need to be brought into a special convocation between now and COP28. How do companies make $200 billion in profits in the last 3 months and not expect to contribute at least 10 cents in every dollar of profit to a loss and damage fund? This is what our people expect. And I ask us, as we reflect on what a loss and damage fund can look like and who should access it, that we convene a special convocation that doesn't only involve state parties, but non-state actors, such as the same companies. We believe as well that the time has come for the introduction of natural disaster and pandemic clauses in our debt instruments. I have said that if Barbados is hit tomorrow, because we have natural disaster clauses, God forbid if we are hit tomorrow, we unlock 18% of GDP over the next 2 years, because what we do is effectively put a pause on all of our debt and put it at the end for 2 years and put it at the end, and we pay back that money at the end. But what we get is the flexibility in the first 2 years to address issues of damage and loss. And finally, we believe that the multilateral development banks have to reform. Yes, it is time for us to revisit Bretton Woods. Yes, it is time for us to remember that those countries who sit in this room today did not exist at the time that the Bretton Woods institutions were formed for the most part. And therefore we have not seen, we have not been heard sufficiently. And if we are therefore to rise to the occasion to play our part to stop the tragic loss of life that we have seen on these screens and the impact on livelihoods that we are feeling across our countries, then there needs to be a new deal with respect to the Bretton Woods institutions. And we need to ensure that they have a different view to their risk appetite, that we look at the SDRs, and that we look at other innovative ways to expand the lending that is available from billions to trillions. My friends, the time is running out on us. And yes, we have the power of choice. When asked what should he do when he became president of South Africa, should he pursue a path of vengeance or should he seek to build a state, Nelson Mandela chose to be able to build a state and to keep a country together. He chose blessings instead of curse because he believed that it would make a defining difference. When given the choice of how to treat the post-war Europe, President Truman settled the Marshall Plan that made the definable difference to the countries that were responsible, yes, for the destruction of so much and for the loss of life of so many. But in spite of that, they chose to rise above it. I ask us today, what will our choice be? We have the power to act or the power to remain passive and do nothing. I pray that we will leave Egypt with a clear understanding that the things that are facing us today are all interconnected. I thank President El-Sisi for his comments that there needs to be peace, because countries like ours continue to suffer as a result of a war that we have no part of, and a war that we want to see come to an end. Our people on this earth deserve better, and what is more, our leaders know better. Because while many of us may not have been alive during the great wars, the consequences of those wars still live with us, and we have the capacity to choose differently. I ask the people of the world, and not just the leaders, therefore, to hold us accountable and to ask us to act in your name to save this earth and to save the people of this earth. The choice is ours. What will you do? What will you choose to save? Thank you.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. WINN FM.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects or sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust. To secure your investment, you need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us.
TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind.
You're always safe with us.
People make the world go round.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. WINN FM.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Buying your medication is easy with City Drug Store's curbside pickup. WhatsApp our certified pharmacist at 662-8769 with your requests. For prescriptions, take a clear photograph and send for review. We will engage you in dialogue and then provide a quotation and link for payment. You can then pay via TDC's online payment portal. And once the transaction is complete, you'll be notified that your pickup is ready. Yes, it's that easy. Send your WhatsApp message to 662-8769 to order your medications today with City Drug Store's curbside pickup service.
People make the world go round.
Welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. I'm your host, Kevon Brown. And you were listening before the break. Apologies for the extended break. You were listening to an address by the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley. Her remarks at the opening of COP27 last week, was it, or earlier this week, where she was addressing world leaders at COP27. She spoke of financing gaps. She spoke of loss and damages. She spoke of accessibility of financing to countries south of the globe. She not only spoke of financing, but she also addressed the accessibility of technologies, batteries and stuff like that, as it relates to securing, renewable, sustainable energy solutions. And she also spoke about the fact that countries, especially the bigger countries, the richer countries, the countries that contribute more towards greenhouse gas emissions, should do more than talk. Should be actionable in their pledges, in the pledges that they made previously, and there were some gaps because COP26 was a very, I wouldn't say contentious, but it did really receive a lot of media play, a lot of media hype, because of the impacts of natural disasters, because people were saying the globe is getting hotter in certain areas, thus contributing to stronger hurricanes and stronger typhoons, and more flooding instances, more drought instances, wildfire instances which destroy crops, help to kill off animals. That in some countries, animals and crops are the bread and butter. That's the thing that puts food on the table. That's the thing that brings in revenue to families, extended families, big families, in other countries. So last year it received a lot of play, and then they made some strides, but there were some gaps that were left. As Mia Mottley indicated, there's the need for loss and damage financing, money to help countries recover from the effects of climate change. That was one of the gaps that was missing. One of the gaps was also the establishment of a global carbon market to price the impacts of emissions into products and services globally. That seems like the implication of another, like they want to tax individuals who, buy muscle cars that need diesel to drive. that that has other implications as well, because it would probably make travel even more expensive, as in tourism more expensive, flights, cruise ships. So that would probably have implications if you are attaching additional prices for using crude oil to get to the places that you need to get to. And then there was strengthen the commitments to reduce the use of coal, because we've seen a resurgence of coal, especially when the situation with Russia and Ukraine occurred, and Russia, the supply of natural gas from Russia to Europe was disrupted. There were sanctions on the natural gas, and that caused the industry, the gas industry, to go haywire. Some at one point in St Kitts and Nevis, we were paying almost $20 a gallon for gas. And in Africa, because of the price, in some African countries, because of the price of fuel, they had to resort to going back to coal. So there were a lot of implications from last year. COP26 was seen as a successful conference, and in all rights, it seemed as if bigger countries were going to spend more money in climate change financing, green financing, loss and damage financing. And then the Russia-Ukraine situation happened, and that seemed to hit a stopgap. And now we're at COP27, where more pledges are going to be made, more promises are going to be made, more bilateral and multilateral talks are going to be had about what can be done and what should be done to fight the climate crisis. But who knows what other exogenous shocks might be waiting between now and COP28. So that kind of begged the question, and I saw a report from Al Jazeera that asked that very question. Do the climate change summits achieve what we hope for them to achieve? And I think that's a very, very interesting question to ask. What do the climate change summits, what do the climate summits achieve, or help to achieve, or hope to achieve, if they do achieve anything? And we're going to hear a little bit from that report.
World leaders gathered in Egypt this week and next for the latest UN climate summit. The agenda could not be clearer. Experts say that the policies governments put in place at last year's conference in Scotland will still leave large parts of our planet uninhabitable. The lack of progress has many questioning the COP process. Activists say it allows politicians and corporations to greenwash their records. On the flip side, UN negotiations and COP conferences are, by default, the best path forward to solve the existential challenge that climate change presents, and to draw attention from news outlets often distracted by other issues, such as the war in Ukraine. At the heart of this year's summit, COP27, are questions of climate justice, like providing climate finance to poorer nations, a critical news angle that tends to get little attention in the Western media. Our starting point this week is Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. In opening the COP27 summit in Egypt, the UN's Secretary General was out to get the global media's attention. So Antonio Guterres stole a line from the world of pop culture to deliver a simple message about a complicated story.
We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator.
Guterres knows news is a competitive business, and climate change is battling against other stories for our attention. Cost of living crises, the pandemic, and the clear and present danger of the war in Ukraine. Stories that could and should be mentioned in the same breath as the changing climate.
Climate change is a threat multiplier. When we talk about the war in Ukraine, we need to talk about how people are being impacted by the historical energy choices that Europe made, depending on Russian oil and gas. When we talk about the cost of living, climate change is putting a giant price tag on our food, on our resources, on building supplies, on our insurance rates. When we're talking about coronavirus, The air pollution from breathing fossil fuels and from wildfire smoke is making COVID worse.
How the media tells a story, how the media connects people in that story is very, very important.
This community is trying to come to terms with what happened.
And what it did in Ukraine, it made people in Europe connect with the people of Ukraine.
There are no legitimate targets in this country.
It needs to do the same in the climate story.
It's a real shame that this is diverting attention from climate change. The war in Ukraine might be a disaster right now, but climate change will be a much greater disaster for a much greater number of countries in the years to come.
UN negotiations on the climate issue are ongoing. COP summits are just the most high-profile aspect of them, and they have credibility issues. 30 years into the process, the pledges and targets keep coming. But the only time emissions have actually gone down was during the worst days of the COVID pandemic. One thing that has gone up, the number of fossil fuel lobbyists attending this COP by 25%. 636 of them are in Sharm el-Sheikh. Then there's the issue of corporate greenwashing, which activists like Greta Thunberg say turns summits like this one into a scam. The Egyptian government's choice of corporate sponsors includes one of the world's top plastic polluters, Coca-Cola, and automobile manufacturer General Motors.
The biggest polluters of the planet are funding what is supposed to be a summit to protect the planet. It's almost like a tragic comedy. So the optics look good for the company, but they definitely don't look good for the UN, which is holding these summits.
It's not the UN itself that is engaging in this corporate sponsorship exercise. This is very much something that's been taken on board by the host government, in this case Egypt. COPs over the years have expanded because civil society, because business groups all want to get involved. Egypt is a developing country which doesn't necessarily have the resources to accommodate all these extra stakeholders who want to be there to make their voice heard. One also has to take into account the importance of engaging with industry. We really cannot solve climate change if we simply try and pretend that big business just isn't there.
And that's not just simply about the corporate giants who sponsor the climate negotiations. People would be shocked that many of the fossil fuel industries, that the ones who are responsible for causing this crisis, are there and not just lobbying in the shadows, but are sitting and meeting with governments, giving high priority access, help shape policies and texts that are being negotiated. And they propose solutions, many of them false solutions.
Here are two terms news consumers should familiarize themselves with: climate finance and loss and damage. Both are high on the COP agenda. Climate finance refers to the responsibility that rich countries have, since they've done most of the polluting, to help developing countries with the cost of decarbonizing their economies and to prepare for and manage the impact of climate change. Loss and damage is a subcategory of climate finance designed to deal with the damage already done. To countries like Pakistan, 1/3 of which was underwater earlier this year, its government needs economic help to deal with floods and other new environmental threats to its people.
For the lost and the damaged of the world, such gatherings are the only hope.
Climate finance has been discussed at previous COPs, but this is the first time that loss and damage has been on the table. Some analysts call that a milestone, potentially, for the developing world.
The poor countries of the world are saying that they are not responsible for the historical emissions. So when we say that the rich countries need to pay money to the developing world, is this going to be in terms of aid? Is it going to be in terms of loan? In the past, a pledge was made that $100 billion would be made available. How much progress has been made on that? We've had at Glasgow the countries admitting that not much money has been put on the table.
And so the term that you might hear is climate finance, which is the idea of providing assistance to countries who need to adapt very quickly, who also need to continue to build their economies, but doing so they requires energy. but allowing them to do so and to develop in a safe way that is resilient to the impacts of a changing climate, they require investment. And many would say, myself included, that it's only fair that that investment come from those who have caused the problem that is impacting them today.
Among the climate mega disasters of 2022, floods in China, Australia, and Nigeria, droughts affecting Ethiopia, Kenya, putting half the population of Somalia at risk of famine, windstorms and heat waves in Western Europe, and Hurricane Ian, which tore through Cuba before slamming into the southeastern U.S. Too many climate-driven disasters to list here, some of which never made it to your news feeds, the way the Ukraine and cost of living stories did. Even less likely to attract news coverage, some of the headway being made technologically. It's not all doom and gloom.
We are seeing progress. It's now cheaper to install solar or wind in most parts of the world than it is to set up a new fossil fuel power station. Emissions in most of the richer world are already on a slow downward trend, and this is at least partly to do with the UN efforts. So certainly there hasn't been enough action, but we cannot just dismiss all these efforts that have taken place. It might be very messy, but it does move forwards.
The media has a very critical role to play, because if it doesn't explain the climate crisis properly, the finance that is needed for developing countries to be able to grow cleanly, then what happens is rich countries say, we don't have a mandate from our citizens to do these things. And that's because their citizens haven't been told the truth. Our media hasn't told them the story, hasn't put pressure on leaders in their own countries and saying, why is it that climate finance is talked about as if it's a charity rather than actually our legal and moral responsibility?
We often think of climate change as a separate topic or a separate bucket. And we only have so much space on our front page, or we only have so much time or attention to put into each bucket. But I would argue that climate change takes issues like the cost of living, political instability, refugee crises, even issues like global pandemics, and exacerbates them or makes them worse. Climate change is an everything issue, and I would love to see climate change mentioned in every topic that the media reports on, because there is no aspect of our lives today that is not already being affected by a changing climate.
Found the sound. 98.9 WINN FM.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
TDC Financial Services, we're here for you to help you make your dreams come true. Whether your needs are big or small, we'll support you with them all. TDC Financial Services, we are strong. TDC Financial Services, this is where you belong.
TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
People make the world go
Welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. I'm your host, Kevon Brown, and you were just listening to a report from Al Jazeera on some of the strides that have been accomplished as it relates to the impact or the effect of the climate conferences. We are on the 27th. That has to do specifically with climate change and what strides have been made so far. We have a caller. Good afternoon, caller.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Again.
Mm-hmm.
I call in to say something quickly.
Sure.
Yes. Number one, but to say, make a few points quickly. Okay, number one, concerning the same climate change issue.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, I would like to say to Johnny, first of all, the Bible was written by men and prophets, by the apostles and prophets of God, and not by King James. Also, they only did an imperfect translation, but the standard is what was originally written by the prophets and apostles of God in the Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic languages. Now let me get on to what I want to say about climate change. Now, the environmentalists and those pushing green energy and that sort of stuff, not only are they pushing for eliminating cattle, but they're also pushing for us to eat bugs and eat lab-made meat and that sort of stuff, which is nonsense. No, even if you have green energy, you still need a lot of fossil fuel and so on to supply the green energy plants and that sort of stuff. But not only that, if you was to do, and sorry, before I continue, let me say, those two audios you played, the first one with Mia Motley, Prime Minister Mia Motley, and the second one, they are wrong in a number of aspects. They are both wrong in a number of aspects. But let me continue here. But if you was to go and do research, right, and you was to look up the batteries that are needed to supply the green energy, like solar energy and wind energy, when you look at the amount of batteries that are needed to supply what a barrel of oil also would supply, is a ton load of big batteries you need to equal 1 barrel of oil. And concerning Miss Henry, the reliability ain't just about winter. We have nights every 24 hours, and there are days when we don't have much sun, and there are days when we don't have much wind for wind turbines and that sort of stuff. And the amount of batteries that you need to supply just 1 barrel of oil is a ton load. So, and they take up far more space, and they're far more bulky. Not only that, to discard the batteries, they are much more hazardous to the environment because of the chemicals and stuff that they have in them, compared to if you go on fossil fuel and natural gas and that sort of stuff. So in the end, you're doing more harm to the environment when you come to discard those very big, bulky batteries. And not only that, like I say, you're going to still need, in spite of all that, you're going to still need fossil fuel and natural gas and that sort of stuff to supply the green energy plants and the wind turbine plants and that sort of stuff. Also as well, environmentalists like the oil companies, they have their lobbies too, and they have very big lobbies. So everybody have their lobbies, everybody. And not only that, when it comes to green energy, when it comes to green energy and that sort of stuff, wind turbines and solar panels and that sort of stuff, solar energy, they might be able to supply a house. You connect them to a house. But when it comes to supplying a large community, and especially if it is growing, they are impractical because the technology isn't up to standard to supply large communities, including growing communities. And not only that, but the amount of land that they take up, it's a ton load of land compared to if you're using fossil fuel and natural fuel and that sort of stuff. Not only that, the batteries them that I spoke earlier of as well involve a lot of mining. And so the more people turn to this unreliable and much more expensive green energy and that sort of stuff, it's far more mining you're going to need in comparison to digging for oil and natural gas and that sort of stuff. So you're actually doing more deforestation and that sort of stuff, the more you turn to green energy to make these batteries and to make these electric cars and that sort of stuff. Now, based upon the stats, based upon the science, CO2 would only cause so much warming and no more, no matter how much CO2 is in the atmosphere. And that's a lot, that's a thing people don't hear. It ain't the more CO2 you have in the air, the more warming it will cause. No, there's a certain point where it will cause more warming. And after that certain point, no matter how much CO2 you add to the atmosphere, it will not go beyond that warming point. So there's a limit to it, to the amount of warming CO2 causes. And based upon the stats as well, while some are saying climate change are causing more hurricane and storms and stronger hurricanes and storms, while some are arguing that, there are others who are arguing as well that that is not the case. And to be quite honest, these few years, we have seen no more hurricane than the other years before. And this year, the hurricane season started very late. And this year hasn't stand out any more than the other years and the few years in the past as well. So I tend to agree with those who say, based upon the stats, no, we are not seeing more hurricanes, more storms, and stronger hurricanes and stronger storms, and more flooding and that sort of stuff. We are not seeing those things.
All right,
maybe
caller.
they are better televised.
All right, caller, thank you for your contribution, but we are at the end of the show. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, there are arguments for both sides. There are arguments to be made for the change to green energy. There are arguments to stay the tradition as it relates to anything that requires change from the old to the new. There are always arguments for and against. That's just how the world works, because oil and crude oil and natural gases weren't always in effect. You know, there was wood burning, there was coal, there was steam energy, and it gradually moved. I'm sure there were people who fought against moving towards natural energy and crude energy because they thought, you know, what if the wells dry? What if we find no more wells? But they found ways to make the industry work, and I'm sure the renewable energy and sustainable energy lobbyists, as was said, will find ways to make their products sellable, just like crude oil will continue to try and make their industry the standard. So there's always going to be the fight against what we need and what others want, and differentiating the two based on your agenda, whether you're against green energy or whether you're for green energy. The world on its face, let me say that, world leaders on their face are suggesting that they want to move towards green energy. Whether that actually happens in an actionable way, whether that happens in the next 5 years or not, because I think, is it in 5 years or is it to 2030? Or whether it happens in the next 10 years or not depends on financing. It depends on working out the kinks, some of the kinks that the last caller did bring up, about the maintenance and sustainability of the things needed to create said renewable energy sources, the wind turbines, the solar panels, and all of that, making them last so that they don't negatively affect the environment, being waste or whatever the case is, disposing of those things, the environmental impact of the disposal of those things that's supposed to help to, save the world should be taken into consideration as well. But they're not going to get everything right, just like crude oil didn't get everything right when I'm sure it started first. So there are arguments to be made for and against, but that conversation is going to have to happen at another time, as we are out of time here for Inside the News. here on WINN FM 98.9. I was your host this afternoon, Kevon Brown, and it was a pleasure. Stay tuned for more from WINN FM.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is WINN FM.
And roll it. Are you?